Let's go over this review. You can do this review. There should be no reason why you don't get a perfect on the quiz. So our quiz will be on section 3.1 to 3.3. So let's take a look at these problems. So we're told that C and D are parallel, and then we cut it with a transversal. So we're creating 8 angles now, and we're supposed to say all the ones that are the same as 124. So all the ones congruent. So 124 and 2 have to be congruent because they're vertical angles. So angle 2 must be 124. Okay. Then I need you to realize angle 7, this and this, they're called corresponding angles. Okay, we're below the one parallel line here, and we're to the left of the transversal. This is in the same position, below the parallel line and to the left of the transversal. So angle 7 is congruent, and therefore angle 6 as well, because we have vertical angles here, or you can look inside here and we have alternating interior angles that are going to be congruent. So you need 2, 7, and 6. Okay. The next one, we are solving for x. We're told that A and B are parallel. So what we have are corresponding angles, and we should know that corresponding angles are congruent. They're equal to each other. So we have a simple equation to set up and real easy to solve. Okay, so when we solve, we subtract 30. So the subtraction property of equalities, that's going to result in an 85. And then our last move is to divide by 5. 85 divided by 5 is going to be a 17. Okay, so x has to be 17. The key, make sure you understand that they have to be congruent. They have to be the same. They're both obtuse angles. Okay, the next one, we have this and this. Now there's no name for this. Okay, so there's no this angle and this angle, no name, but I know this also has to be 142, okay, because they're vertical angles. And now I have consecutive interior. So when we have consecutive interior, and we're told that these are parallel lines, they have to be supplementary. So that means we're going to add these two angles together, and it's going to be equal to 180. So I'm going to distribute right away. So this angle is twice x plus 9, but I'm going to write it as 2x plus 18. Okay. And then the other angle is 142. We know together that has to equal 180. So we're just going to simply solve. We'll combine like terms. This results in 160. We're going to subtract 160. And we're left with 2x equals 20. Divide by 2. And that's how we get x is 10. Okay. So it is very important that you can recognize supplementary angles. Number 4, once again, we have consecutive interior angles. So they are supplementary. They are not equal to each other. So these two angles added together has to equal 180. So I'm going to distribute the 2. So I'm going to write 2x plus 30 plus the 3x plus 20, which is this angle down here. We know together has to be 180. So 2x and 3x, that is the 5x. This is going to add up to 50. The 30 and 20 will be 50. Now we're down to a two-step equation. We're going to subtract the 50 on both sides of the equal sign. When we do that, we get 130. When we divide by 5, x equals 26. So 26 is what we are looking for x. Okay? Then when you see this next problem, I am hoping you automatically know that they are corresponding angles. Okay, so parallel lines cut by transversal, these are then corresponding angles, and we should know from the theorem, corresponding angle theorem, that they are congruent. So I just have to write 13x minus 8 equals 11x plus 14. Okay. And it should be pretty easy to solve for this. I'm going to bring the 11x over. So I'll subtract these. And I'm going to add 8 right away. So I'm left with 2x on the left. And then this becomes a 22. When I divide by 2, we know that x is an 11. Okay? Again, it's either going to, when we have parallel lines cut by transversal, your angles are either going to be congruent or they're going to be supplementary. And we have to know the difference. Okay? Coincident lines, these are lines that are the same. So lines on top of a line. So that means all the points, okay, are in common. And then I quickly added the one about skew. When you are dealing with skews, they never intersect, so there's no points in common, and they're in different planes. So like parallel lines will never intersect, but they're on the same plane, where skew lines are on different planes. So you want to put the word none here. So just make sure that goes back to the section 3.1 when we define certain words. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so the next part of this is just being able to identify the certain types of angles when we have two lines cut by transversal. Again, these lines don't have to be parallel. We still will have the name. So the fact is, here's my two lines cut by a transversal. So here's my transversal. We have consecutive interior. So that is D. Okay. For this one, these look parallel, but again, they don't have to be parallel. But I'm hoping that you realize they are corresponding angles. Okay, they're in the same relative position. Therefore, they're corresponding. So let me write a D up here. Let me write the A on the line. So D and A. For number 9, we're definitely dealing with, some people are still, here's my lines, and we're inside. So we're dealing with interior, but then they're on each side of the transversal. So that forces that to be alternating interior angles. Okay, again, this goes back to section 3.1. So look over the notes. Remember, you have an ebook. You can look at the examples on your ebook. If you go to Big Ideas, select the ebook, and just look over it until your brain understands the names of these angles. Okay, so the last one, hopefully you realize, here's my two lines intersected by the transversal. These are on the outside, so they are exterior, and they're alternating. So alternating exterior, which is B. Okay, I am hoping everyone's going to get that part of the quiz correct. Okay, we have to, because that, when we do proofs, we have to be able to understand the names of the angles we're looking at to be able to justify the statements. Okay, so that's very important to understand these types of angles. In your quiz, you're going to see a very similar box. I know this letter right here is very hard to see. Okay, that's point F, okay, in the corner of that box. So, but you're going to see a very similar box, and you need to make sure you understand what lines we're looking at, and make sure you actually include the point that I want you to include. Okay, so for number 11, I want to be parallel to BC. So BC is this line back here. And I want to be parallel, and I want to contain point D. So it has to be line AD. Now you could say DA, but you need the points, the letters A and D, and then the line above it. Okay, they are parallel. Okay, the next one, we're looking at line DC, and we want to be skewed to it. So DC is this line. Okay, remember, skew lines are on different planes, so we can't use AB, and we want to make sure that they never intersect. So that's where we're going to use this. Okay, we're going to use B and F. So line BF is on different planes, and they will never intersect. okay, or FB, but you need these two letters, okay? The next one is CG. So CG, we're looking at this line, and we want to be perpendicular, and we want to go through D, so it's going to be DC. These would form a 90-degree angle, so line DC, okay? And then our last one, we're dealing with a plane. Now remember, we need three letters to identify a plane, so we're looking at plane DCG. So DCG is this side of the box. Think of this as a side of a box to be parallel. Remember, this extends forever, all in all directions here. We would have to have this side of the box. So we need A, B, F, A, B, E, any three combinations of three letters on this side. Okay, so they're parallel. Think about looking at a physical box. This end and this end would never intersect. Okay, so I'm going to use points A, B, and E because they're the ones you can clearly see. A, B, E. And again, the order doesn't matter. So if you have EAB, that is perfectly acceptable. Okay, you will see a picture very similar to this on your quiz. So we have to recognize, I want to know all the angles that are corresponding with angle 7. Okay, so if it helps, cover up this part. Okay, so I'm going to cover up this. Here's a line cut by transversal. Corresponding angles are in the same position, relative same position. So I know angle 3 is corresponding to 7. So I'm going to put angle 3. So 7 and 3 are corresponding. And then if I look at it like this, okay, my transversal is this line now. I'm to the left and below. Left and below would be angle 9. So angle 9. Those are your two angles. No other angle from this diagram that would be corresponding to angle 7. Okay, so just make sure you understand what you're going to be looking at when you do this problem on your quiz. Okay, for number 16, what you need to realize is that we have two parallel lines cut by a transversal. I relabeled that T. It's easier to find angle 2 right away because what we have here are corresponding angles. Okay, we're in the relative same position, and we should know that corresponding angles are congruent. So that forces this to be 93 degrees, and I'm going to say corresponding. Okay. The next part, to be able to find angle 1, these are not the same. Obviously, it's not going to be 93 and 93, but we know that then they're supplementary. So I'm going to take 180 minus 93, and we get 87 because we know these are linear pairs. Okay, linear pairs by definition are supplementary. Okay, so angles 1 and angle 2 are linear pairs, and we know linear pairs add up to 180. Therefore, angle 1 must be an 87. For 17, the easiest thing to realize is, and I already have it right here, these are vertical angles. Okay, need you to realize I can easily tell that angle 1 must be 70 degrees because we're dealing with vertical angles. That goes back to chapter 2. Okay, now hopefully you can also see, here's my parallel lines cut by transversal. 70, this angle, and angle 2 are alternating exterior angles, and we know by the theorems in 3.2, we know, 3.2, we know that they have to be congruent. So they have to be the same. So angle 2 is also 70, and you can say alternating exterior. Okay, so then I am supposed to look at this diagram, and I'm supposed to tell which lines, name a pair of parallel lines. And we have to go by the picture that has the direction arrows. Okay, so we can see EF. Okay, so EF or DF. So when you're looking at this, I can use any of the letters. So like right here, let's make sure you can see this. It's somewhat hard to see. That line and this line are parallel because of the directions. We know the direction arrows. We know that they have to be parallel. So I'm going to use F and a D. Okay, but you can use any combination of the letters on that line, any two. And then I'm going to use a G. So that's a G and a C. But when you're checking your answers, as long as you use the letters, any letters on this line, any letters on this line, you're correct. Okay? So make sure you can identify parallel. You can't assume these are parallel because I don't have the direction arrows. So make sure you can identify parallel lines by the indicators. For this one, I want to be perpendicular. I see we have a right angle right there. So we just have to be able to find letters on this. This looks like a C and A. So I'm going to use line CA or AC, and then it's going to be perpendicular because of the 90-degree angle I see to A, B, and again, any combination of the letters that are on this line you can use. So I'm just going to say CA and AB are perpendicular. Okay, so now we have 3 proofs. Okay, I am hoping you're going to be able to fill in the reason on your quiz. Okay, so it's very important that you can name the angles that we're looking at. So here we want to prove, we need to prove R is parallel to S. You can't assume, okay? I can't assume right away that 2 and 3 are congruent because I don't know that they're parallel. So start with the given. So what we are told is that M and N are parallel. So I'm allowed to look at these angles, okay? And because they're parallel and cut by a transversal, we have in 3.2 a theorem that says they have to be congruent. And that theorem is the corresponding, because we're dealing with corresponding angles theorem. Okay? Then the next thing we're going to look at, and it's very important that you see this. If I look at 2 and 3 right now, I don't know that they're congruent. Okay? So go back to step 1 and step 2, and hopefully you're going to clearly see the reason I can say 2 is congruent to 3 is the transitive property. I can remove angle 1, okay, and say that 2 is congruent to 3 because that's the transitive property of congruency. So just make sure it's not POE. We're dealing with a congruent symbol, okay? But now that I know, like I was able to establish that these are congruent, and then that's when we get to 3.3, where then we have the converse, okay? So if we're told that our, and I need you to realize these are alternating exterior angles. If we have alternating exterior angles that are congruent, which we just established that they're the same, then we can say the lines are parallel. So that's the alternating exterior angles converse. Okay, so in 3.3, we are dealing with the converse statement. So it's very important that you have the converse here so that we can then prove that those lines are parallel. So we were able to establish that they're congruent. Therefore, we can establish that they are parallel. Okay, so again, make sure you reason that out in your head. And for this next proof, this is a 3.2 proof because we're told all the lines are parallel, or like L1 and L2 are parallel to each other, and line 3 and line 4 are parallel. So this is a 3-2 proof. So we're starting off with telling you that we're dealing with parallel lines. So now when I look at angles 1 and 3, here's my parallel lines cut by a transversal. We need to realize they're alternating interior angles. And there was a theorem in 3-2 that said, hey, if you're dealing with parallel lines, then the alternate interior angles have to be congruent. And that's the reason why we're able to say they're congruent. Then I'm going to look at 1 and 2. Again, we have another set of parallel lines cut by a transversal. Now we have corresponding angles. So there's a corresponding angle theorem. Corresponding angles theorem that says your corresponding angles have to be congruent. And then I can clearly see step 2 and step 3, we share the angle 1. So we can get rid of angle 1 and we can say, hey, well, then that forces 2 to be congruent to 3. And that's what we wanted to prove. And that is the transitive property of congruency. Okay, not equality. We're dealing with a congruent symbol. So make sure we were able to do plenty of proofs in our notes. I have the complete notes in Schoology. Make sure you can justify those steps. Okay, you're going to see a very similar proof on your quiz. Okay, this last proof, this is from section 3.3, where we're going to try to prove we have line 1 and line 2 that are going to be parallel. Okay, but we're given that lines 3 and 4 are parallel to each other. So that's how we're going to get started. So this is given. And we're also told that 1 and 3 are supplementary. So we know that they're going to add up to 180. So step 2, we're now able to look at angles 2 and 3. Okay, since we're told that these are parallel, so this was given, cut by a transversal, we know then that 2 and 3 must be congruent because they're alternating interior angles. So that's going to be alternating interior angles theorem. So that's from 3.2. So that was part of the 3.2 theorems. And then for step 3, all we did was change the congruent to an equal sign. Well, we're allowed to do that because that's what it means to be congruent. So definition of congruent angles. Okay? So now what I need you to realize is we were given that 1 and 3 are supplementary. So by definition, I can say that 1 plus 3 has to be 180 because we're told they're supplementary. We read supplementary. We know it has to add up to 180. So that's another definition of supplementary angles. Okay? Now, make sure you understand this. We did not use the transitive property here. We're told that 2 and 3 are the same. So I'm allowed to replace this 3 with a 2. So that's just simply substituting. I'm replacing the 3 with something that's equal to it. That is simply substitution, property of equality. Okay? And then from there, the fact that we can see that 1 and 2 are equal to 180, I can say that 1 and 2 are supplementary by definition. So as soon as we can show that they must add up to 180, I am going to use the definition of supplementary again. Supplementary angles. Okay? And now what you need to realize, as soon as we prove that 1 and 2 are supplementary, we look at our list of theorems in 3.3. We know that these are consecutive interior angles. And if I can show that we have consecutive interior angles that add up to 180, meaning they're supplementary, that forces these two lines to be parallel. So this is from 3-3. We have the consecutive interior angles converse. So you need to make sure you have the word converse here, because in 3-3, we're proving by using angles, by showing that in this case the angles are supplementary, I can then conclude that the lines have to be parallel. So it's the converse, and that's really from 3-3. Okay, so hopefully forcing yourself to understand everything on this review and go back and look at some of the big idea assignments in each of the sections and look back over the notes. I have all the notes in Schoology, so the problems that we didn't do together, you can fill in and then check your answers. There's lots of proofs that we did, so make sure you're ready to take your quiz on 3-1 to 3-3. Thank you for watching, and I'm hoping this has paid off for you by taking the time to make sure you really understand these problems. Reach out to me if you have any questions. Take care.